Welcome to the Women Filmmaker panel. We are here with Jen, Sharon Lawrence, Mercedes Cooper, and Jessica Andres to share all their great experiences, I'm pretty sure. So please don't be shy. I'm going to trigger some questions, and then after, just like take advantage of have this great professional with us. I would like to ask you to introduce yourself briefly and maybe a little bit tell about your background within filmmaking and how you got into filmmaking.
Okay, we'll start with me. I'm Jen Lariah Long, and I'm not actually a filmmaker. I'm an entertainment and technology attorney on the board of Women in Film as their vice president of technology. And what I do with Women in Film is help women understand how to use technology to get over the traditional barriers to entry for successful filmmaking. So we'll be talking a lot about that, but I've been with HollyShorts for a couple of years now, and glad to be back.
I am Sharon Lawrence. I am an actress and a producer and responsible for Jen's involvement in Women in Film, which I think is as big an accomplishment as anything else I've ever done, because not only has her knowledge opened up the door to so many of our questions and thus opportunities, but she now is someone who has spearheaded panels like this and is always connecting us with new information and a new perspective. And as a woman in the business and who feels very strongly about supporting other women and has benefited from my commitment to working with women, because I have now made choices about my business, both from a business perspective as well as from an artistic perspective, because I'm just more conscious and I'm more invested and I'm more satisfied even by the creative collaborations and by the progress that I see us making as women. So people like Jen, who now I consider as part of my team, is one of the reasons that I'm so happy to be here today. And I'm going to now pass this on to Mercedes Cooper, who will tell you why I'm so blessed to be in her company too.
We love Sharon. My name is Mercedes Cooper. I'm the marketing manager for AFFIRM, which is the African American Film Festival Releasing Movement. We like to shorten it, keep it short, so we just say AFFIRM. But we're a distribution company, and I guess you could call our films specialty films. So I can talk a little bit about that. The founder of AFFIRM is actually a filmmaker by the name of Ava DuVernay, who was a publicist for major films for over 14 years. And she actually is directing, writing, producing her own work, and this year alone she's made 2 branded short films for clients, basically, and hopefully one we'll get to show you today, so you can kind of see how short form can move you forward, and your work and your vision. And I am no longer a filmmaker, although I did go to film school, but while there just realized that I was really more interested in what happens after I make my film, which is something that they didn't teach you in film school. The marketing, the distribution, the acquisitions, all that really appealed to me much more, so I'm happy to share what I've been learning so far with you.
Cool. My name is Jessica Andres, and I work at a company called ArcLight Films, different from ArcLight Cinemas. We're an Australian company, and we do international sales, and we also do in-house production. For the most part, we acquire movies within either whether they're pre-sellable, so they haven't been made yet. We assess different scripts. We can either acquire them and sell them, or we can actually produce them in-house, and our range is between 10 to 25 million. For the most part, I got into international sales and distribution simply because I wanted to know, like her, where the money was coming from. And a lot of the times I see great filmmakers with films and it's like sitting on their shelf at home. And it's kind of like getting that understanding of the movie that one is making has to also be made for a certain type of audience, and kind of understanding the greater general, scheme of where your movie's going to go and how you can make your profits back. Because I really believe that making a good movie isn't just about, making product just for the sake of making product, like an action movie for the sake of making a crappy action movie. But it's like bringing together your artistic talents, but knowing the audience that's out there so you can marry those two things and get your movies like distributed. For the most part, prior to this, I worked at Lionsgate, and prior to that, I worked at GK Films. So I've been able to see movies from, some crazy budgeted amount that nobody should ever touch to independent filmmakers who are making movies at, like a few $100,000 that look amazing. So I'm always congratulating and urging women to like go out there and make amazing movies, but also have a sense of what your audience is and where your movie's going to go so you can make something amazing out of it.
What is to be a woman within the filmmaking world or the business world? Could you explain any difficulties and share any problems that you overcome?
Sure. Just before we start, if you don't mind,
Sure,
Emma,
sure.
just piggybacking off what Jesse was saying and knowing who your audience is, I would kind of like to know who's here today. How many of you are writers? How many of you are directors? And how many of you are producers? How many of you are actors? And how many of you are, who am I leaving out? Executives, cinematographers. I love it. And do we have any execs in the room? Business execs. Any other lawyers in the room? Well, I'm actually really, really excited that hands went up multiple times, because the one thing that I love about working with women in this industry is that they're capable of being the classic multi-hyphenate, that you do everything. So in terms of one of the challenges that I have seen with my clients is that, trying to figure out how to do everything on a tight budget with very tight timelines. And I think that's uniquely suited to a shorts context.
Well, I guess if you ask from the actor's perspective, I think it depends on whether you're in features or whether you're in television or whether you're on stage or whether you're in news or reality. I think that the industry that has traditionally and still remains the toughest for women to drive their own business in is feature films in terms of creating the content. However, there are, at this point, I think a fairly even split of women running studios to men, which is an interesting dichotomy if you think about what that took for those women like Amy Pascal and Sherry Lansing, who's no longer running but was certainly one of the pioneers, what it took for them to reach that height. Cinematographers, I think we know that's still one of the toughest field for women to crack. And I talk to any woman that I see on the set who's a DP, whether she's in the camera department, whether she's a first AC, a second AC, is she loading film, is she pulling focus? And often those women are sort of stealth in their progress up the ladder. As an actress, I never felt any discrimination at all in my theater days. And one could argue that's because I was working in musical theater where the dominant culture was run by gay men who loved all women, right? So that was something that I don't think I even recognized until I came to Los Angeles and started working in television, where I found that the primary voices that were creating content and making decisions, whether it was the show creators and runners or the executives at the studios, this is now 20 years ago, were still men. So women, the images of women and the context with which they were presented could still be considered fairly limited. But I know that in that 20 years that has changed because there are more female showrunners. And I think with the advent of reality television, women now, a range of women you see all over the place. I think that now with what Mark Cherry and Ava Longoria are doing with Devious Maids, with what Univision is doing, that now you're seeing a range of women of color. I think that will only continue to expand with the Asian markets, with the the Near East markets with India, all those markets will continue to percolate up because of the new distribution explosion. There's a big shift in what's happening. You guys can come ahead and sit down. Don't be shy. We're not formal here at all. There's 20 years ago, there were far more gatekeepers than there are now, and they did happen to be more men than women. But I do think that what you see as a challenge is parity. Women are still not paid as much as men for any of the positions, perhaps the executive levels, because I don't think we always have the access to those salaries. But the studies that are done every year from the University of Southern California at San Diego always show this gap of female directors to male directors. And what we have to ask ourselves, is that because they are not given opportunities or because there are just fewer of them pursuing it? And that's important for us to really make that distinction. If we're crying foul or that we don't have access, let's make sure that that's really what the issue is, as opposed to a matter of interest. If you've ever directed, you know it requires the effort of a general moving an army anywhere, whether it's a small film or a bigger film. So understanding that I think it's more about personality types in a way. Now, if you're selling a film, I think Mercedes can talk about this when she talked about specialty films. If you're selling a film and raising money for a film, if you're a white male, it comes to you more easily. And they talked about something. I'm sorry, this is going long, but ideas or answers are coming to me, and I might as well say them while they're here. They did a study, I think, at Sundance, Sundance Institute, which Women in Film is now part of, and I'm sure Ava, because Ava won Best Director at Sundance for her film Middle of Nowhere, which is how I got involved with them, because I'm in the film, and so I was there during that time. That she was then brought on as this program where Sundance and Women in Film together are following the trajectory of the women who were successful at Sundance. And what they have been able to determine is that if you were a woman at Sundance who won an award or recognition, then the doors open for you. But if you were a male filmmaker at Sundance, you did not have to win any particular accolade for the same doors to open for you. So that is worth understanding and distinguishing, and that means that we have to honor ourselves. We have to create those levels where you break through the noise and the buzz because attention is being called to you. It's a subjective business, so let's face it. The good news about that is getting acknowledgement does not have to be based on a certain dollar number of your film, how much it made. It can be about other qualifications or quantifying factors. So recognize that patting each other on the back and saying it loud and out loud is very valuable, because that just brings more eyes and attention, which might open a door for somebody.
Thank you. So pick up a little bit where you left off. It is unfortunate that, you have to win something for your work to have a little bit more merit. We did find that, just looking at the films from the 2012 year and the directors and sort of the trajectory of where their careers have gone. But
we should specify that it was an African-American filmmaker.
Yes, she is. Ava DuVernay, the founder of a firm who is also a filmmaker, is an African-American filmmaker, which is a badge that she wears very proudly. And, in interviews, she's very blunt, saying, I'm not just a filmmaker, I'm an African-American woman filmmaker. And that does influence the work that she does, and she is very proud of that. And Affirm also, I know your initial question was the challenges of being a woman filmmaker. It's interesting for me because the company that I work for is the first distribution company I've worked for, and we're a very, very small in-house team, all of women. So in-house, we don't we don't face any challenges in terms of gender blocks. And I would think that I do know that what we try to do is have the utmost professionalism when we are dealing with external people, because not to say that people would expect less of us, but we want to give them more than what they would expect from anyone else. So I think that that's one thing that we're always aware of as we do business with our filmmakers, our clients, our press contacts. We always try to be, 3 steps ahead, so that we can, say, hey, we're a real studio, and yes, we're female run, but we know what we're doing. So I think that does sort of stay on the back of our minds. But other than that, I wouldn't say that there's too much of a challenge for us as we speak here now. More to come, maybe.
But all of these films do tend to be female-centric.
Yes.
You want to list what they are? So that
Yes. Yes, her. She started making docs when she first became a filmmaker, and in 2011 she made her first narrative feature called "I Will Follow," which toured at various film festivals and got the recognition of Roger Ebert and other, people that we love as critics. The people that you want to love your film, that type of thing. And just in 2012, she made her second feature, which Sharon Lawrence gives wonderful performance in, called Middle of Nowhere, which did win the Best Director Award at Sundance that year, as well as the John Cassavetes Spirit Award this past year in 2013. About a woman. And which doesn't seem... to say, oh, she made a film about a woman. A film's either going to be about a woman, it's going to be about a man, it's going to be about a child. But I think that when you have a person of color directing a film about a female, it then goes into its own separate category. Like, is this universal? Is this something that, the mass will want to see? And, I think it was a constant push all through 2012 because our company, Affirm, actually released the film as well in conjunction with Participant Media, which actually I'll note one thing about that too, because we just had wonderful news. We were working with Participant Media on a social awareness campaign with regards to prison phone rates. The prison phone rates to make calls was just astronomical. And just 2 weeks ago, the FCC ruled to lower those rates considerably. It was something that we had been fighting for, petitioning for like over a year and a half. And
that's what Middle of Nowhere.
Yes,
is about.
yes.
A woman whose husband's in prison,
incarcerated,
and how their relationship is so damaged by the distance, literally. So that social action piece was about making families be able to stay more in contact with their loved ones.
Right. And what we learned through that social action campaign is that it's a very universal theme. We had a woman at Sundance who stood up, was not a woman of color, quote unquote, and gave a very emotional speech about, in the Q&A session, out of nowhere, this is my story, basically. And she actually joined the social action campaign very, very early on, writing letters. And her final remarks were actually used in the closing case. And so it was just, it shows you that even if you start with something that no one else necessarily believes has a life beyond, point 1, 2, or 3, keep fighting for it, because it will find its audience. It will find its purpose.
I think the takeaway in answering what Inmo's saying is actually, Mercedes, you might want to address this, but in terms of obstacles, she can talk about the obstacles that Ava faced, which is part of the reason why Affirm was created.
Yes, that is very true. With the first film, I Will Follow, which I was not part of the company at that time. I joined, I would say, about 3 months after that film was released. But what I do know of that film is that, one, she financed it pretty much herself, because she wasn't going to wait around for a studio to give merit to this project that she loved and she felt needed to be told and wanted to be told. So she made it on her own. And And then again, it goes to the question that I said earlier. Okay, I have this film. I made this film. What do I do with it now? You know, do you wait for someone to hopefully sell it for you, pick it up for you?
Tell what that's about. People might not know. I don't think they will know.
Oh, I will follow? Yeah. So the story is about a woman who is basically, it's a day in the life of a woman who's packing up the house of her aunt who she's lived with, who's passed away from cancer. And it was a personal story for Ava, and something that really came out beautiful in sort of the simplicity of that story, just the day in the life and these this sort of revolving door, these characters who come in and out of this house, and her relationship with each person in the film. You know, her cousin, the daughter of the aunt that's passed away, her nephew, the cable woman, her best friend, an ex-boyfriend. You know, things of that nature. And so, a very simple story. You know, will people watch it? You know, it's a question that she didn't wait for someone else to answer for her. She thought, I have this this opportunity to maybe start this collective that could not only help myself as a filmmaker distribute films, but also give a shine to other filmmakers who are in the same situation as me, whose work may not, get the recognition and reach that it deserves. So since then we've released 5 films. Kenya Rwanda, which also played at Sundance, didn't get picked up except for by us, of course. Restless City, which also played at Sundance, didn't get picked up except by us. As well as Better Must Come, which is from a Jamaican filmmaker, and our last release, Big Words, which we just released in middle of nowhere, of course. I say which also played at Sundance because there's a lot of films that go through festivals, and you don't hear from them again unless they are sort of like the one to watch. There's always the 5 kind of to watch, 3 to 5 to watch at the major festivals. And then what happens to the rest? Do they get picked up for theatrical? Do they get picked up for DVD? Do they do international? Do they have an international appeal where they get sold? So those are all questions I think to consider about your work. What are you going to do after you make your film? Is that over to you?
Yay. Oddly enough, it's an interesting subject to talk about women in film because I work at a company with nothing but a bunch of white guys. So I constantly have the conversation and I've had this conversation with my bosses, and I said, being a woman in this town where, one, you're not a dude, you're not white, and you're not Jewish, no offense to Jewish women, but is really, really hard. And I've seen and I've worked with bosses who, they're Asian or African American. One of my closest friends, a close friend, Cheryl Boone Isaacs, is now the president of AMPUS. And that was a huge, monumental moment for women because she is African American. She's worked in this business. She's worked in, major studios, and now she's heading AMPUS, and she was against... Oh, I'm sorry. Do you know what that is? It's the Academy of Motion Pictures of Arts and Sciences. It's the Oscars. It's the Academy, and it was such a big thing for us to know that now we're really ushering diversity in an otherwise what is known to be kind of like the white dudes, industry. But, and they're bringing in that sense of change, and so we know that women are present. Not only are they present, they're smart, they have grit, they're willing to, as you said, they play multiple hyphenated roles, and they can... they can roll with the punches, and that's all great and good. But at the end of the day, here I am, I'm a manager at work, and I look at my boss and I go, this is really hard trying to roll with you're constantly trying to pull projects, get projects going, and it's a little harder. It is a little harder when you're a woman. Let's face that reality. But at the same time, it's not impossible. It is absolutely not impossible. And the ability to make it possible comes with, from what I've seen, at least working in this, white dude's world side of, sitting behind a desk, is being strategic. It's knowing how to plan ahead with the movie that you're creating, with the project that you have. And again, and I go back to knowing what your audience is, because if you know what that is out there, you know the kind of movie that you're creating. If you're creating a drama, make it a drama where people cry. We've had trouble with dramas where the Japanese won't buy it because the people aren't crying. We've had that trouble. We've had trouble where we've, sold a movie to Germany, and it's an Asian movie with like big Chinese cast, and they're like, why is there comedy in this? We bought an action movie. If you're going to make an action movie, make an action movie. Know what your movie wants to be at the end of the day, and that has nothing to do with you being a female filmmaker. It has to do with your creativity about making a great movie. But know what your movie's about, and that's something we've talked about with a lot of young filmmakers. It's like they're doing all this cross-genre. It's a romance comedy about like some dude in a hotel in a wheelchair, and there's this time traveling yada yada, and the dog talks to him at the end of the day. And it's like, we don't know what you want to be. If we don't know what you want to be, your audiences don't know what you want to be. Once that's clear and that's focused for the young filmmaker, you go out and you make the best movie that you can make. And I tell you, 9 times out of 10, when I have to read scripts and I have to watch movies, I don't care about whether the filmmaker is white or black or Chinese or whatever, or male or female. I just want to be entertained. I want to be entertained, and I don't want to be entertained in like a retarded way. Like, I'm not retarded. I want something that's intelligent at the same time. And if I find that script that just blows me, I can't let go. And I talk about it with everybody till they're like so nauseated. They're like shoving me away, like, get away from me. But that's the thing. It's like, I've seen that with it's a tough business to get into, but if you strategize it properly to know what it needs to be, and you have the conversations in building that film to what it needs to be able to compete with everything that's out there, then you're not just like creating a movie that nobody can figure out. We want to be entertained by you. We just need you to figure out what you need to do to entertain us. So that's kind of like, blah. Okay, I hope that made sense.
Oh, that was great. Thanks, Jessie. I just wanted to jump in here because, we're women in film, and our organization, our mission statement is to help women become successful in the industry and to celebrate the legacy of the women who've gone before us. And to bring it back to the women that we've interviewed over the years for our legacy series, the women that we work with every day, the constant cry, to piggyback off to what Jessie was saying, is that we hope someday not to have a women in film. It's just going to be about people in film. So we know what we want to exercise your authentic voices in the content that you're creating. And kudos to Daniel and Theo for putting on this amazing festival, because they've always been very focused on giving opportunities to women to express those voices. And I think that shorts, from the technology standpoint, the entertainment and technology standpoint that I come from, is a very perfect way of helping you go through all the steps necessary to make your feature or make your television debut or your Broadway debut, because the short form context, everything is so compacted, and yet the barriers to entry, because of the way technology has lowered the cost to enter into this marketplace, are, I think, at the perfect place where it's not about whether you're a woman or a man. It's about how well can you communicate your story to an attention deficit disorder generation audience. You only have less than half an hour to get your point across. And as women, we're used to multitasking and doing 6 million things at one time. So there's already that sort of built-in, let's look at what the efficiencies are. If we want to get child A and child B to 2 different schools across town, do we make them go to bed in their school clothes the night before so we can cut off that 15 minutes so you can have a coffee on the way? So that is ideally suited to this generation. I mean, I find that right now I have ADD just because I want to tweet everything that everybody's saying because they're such pearls of wisdom. But at the same time, you're listening to this one piece, this other piece, and then trying to tie it all together in your mind, because the short form content, which is facing us, everywhere you look, is also forcing our brains to change. And your brain, and women, we've already had that change happen to us, I think, a little bit sooner than men. No offense to the men in the room. But it's become this unique filter. So it's like cutting out all the BS and getting to the point. So when you're thinking about what you're creating, get to the point. Do your research, get to the point. Don't waste time, get to the point.
I've got a question about that, or maybe it's more of a discussion point that has to do with what you're talking about and what you're talking about, which is how do you, as a filmmaker, decide what genre you are going to pursue? And how do you stick to the decisions that you make and not be pulled away by someone else's influence, whether it's a company that you think you're trying to raise money from or a partner that you have found along the way? That's, I think it takes practice, but it also might be worth discussing some of the case studies that you've seen and how you would advise navigating, building a team and not being pulled off your vision. Do you see that? Have you seen that? Or whoever has a thought.
I definitely have seen that with my clients. You know, I meet some wonderful people through Women in Film, through HollyShorts, and they come up to me and they say, you know, I need an entertainment attorney. I have this great idea. And I say, well, tell me a little bit about yourself, because I want to know how your idea relates to you as a person, because I want to hear your voice. I want to know who you are. And is this idea true to you, or is this an idea that you should try selling to somebody else who will do it better because it's true to them? Sometimes we have great ideas because we're used to thinking for other people. You know, there's this wonderful book that I highly recommend, and I'm not just saying it because one of the writers is a board member of Women in Film, but it's by Sheryl Sandberg, who is the CEO of Facebook. It's called Lean In. You should absolutely read it, and it tells you a lot about her experiences as a woman executive in the technology/entertainment business, but also just in general as a woman trying to be successful. And my point there is that if, as a woman, you know, your voice is romantic comedies, and yes, you'll hear all the time, oh, romantic comedies, you know, there's such a thing of the past. Who cares? I want to see romantic comedies. When I buy DVDs, the only DVDs I buy, because it's the stories I want to see again and again and again, is a romantic comedy. I honestly, I mean, Avengers is great, but I don't necessarily need to see it again and again and again. I might want to see clips of it, you know, certain action scenes, but I love that moment, you know, like the first kiss in a romantic comedy. That's great. And when you're depressed and just feeling awful, like my girlfriends in college, they were saying, you know, everybody has all those same DVDs because every time you break up with a boyfriend, you want to watch Sleepless in Seattle. Right? And that's Sleepless in Seattle, you know, and that's your authentic voice. So if that's your brand, then absolutely stick to your brand, who you are, and tell the stories that, you know, I think they advise all writers, you know, talk about what you know.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I think it's very, very important to stay true to your personal voice because it's going to show in your work. At the end of the day, if you don't absolutely love what you're creating, like if that's not coming from within you, it's going to show in the final product. Me personally, I'm a sci-fi fantasy girl. I'm just waiting for women to take over the sci-fi fantasy genre. I just can't wait, and I'm really waiting since I work for a company that distributes, you know, African American directed, or I should say not necessarily American, but films by black directors. I'm really waiting for a black director to make a really good sci-fi piece so I could say, look, Ava, we got this sci-fi film, the first sci-fi film for a firm. Wouldn't that be great? That's my goal, to find that film. But, you know, I think that, you know, we have, you know, filmmakers like Catherine Bigelow, you know, who are very, very successful in, you know, that's her area, you know what I mean? I don't know if I would like a Catherine Bigelow directed romantic comedy. I don't know. I would be interested to see it. I would go watch it, but I don't know if I would enjoy it. So I would say, you know, stick with your brand and your voice, and that will, you know, be, I think, one step further in your journey pushing you forward.
There's something to be said about collaboration, and all movies are a gigantic collaboration with like 900 million people and the kitchen sink. But even the little, yeah, exactly. It's interesting because it is about staying true to your voice as a female, but I am a firm believer that it's good to get other people's opinions because there will be things that they see that will help enhance your story. Now, there is a difference between someone derailing your story and going, I hate this, you need to change this, this, and this. That's when you might want to listen to yourself and go, is that the direction I want to go in? Or you may want to take a step back and listen to someone saying, well, this kind of doesn't make sense because it doesn't go into this and blah, blah, blah. And that's just my experience with like working with other female directors and writers and blah, blah, blah. It's like the great story is there. Now we just need to tweak it. Let's make the necessary changes so the story is tight and the message is clear. The overarching story is already there. Now we just have to do little tweaks and whatever. The point being is no one's trying to derail your story. They're just there to help enhance it because there are things that I don't see, but somebody else will see. And somebody else will see. But it's still up to you to maintain that sense of vision and your voice. If you feel that something just isn't right, then that's your call at the end of the day because that will be you as a filmmaker. Another thing is it's also the collaboration between director and producer. If the producer comes in and hires the director, that might be a different relationship from the director being the inception of the story and being the producer and being the equity investor and being the DP and being the actor and being the everything else. So it's kind of like there is going to be a different kind of relationship depending on when you come on board as director on a certain project because that kind of sometimes if the producer comes in and says, I want you to direct my movie, I'm going to pay you this much, you may also have to kind of work with the producer in terms of the vision they want for the movie. And that you don't want to have to butt heads and kill each other. But that may also be a great relationship and learning experience for you. And at the same time, you might also kind of, like I've always told people, because movies are so difficult, and it's such a long and arduous road. I've just been through that arduous road this weekend, shooting somebody's short. Boy, was that road long. Boy, all that stuff is still in my car. If you look at my car, there's crates of stuff and a coffee maker. Some craft services. Some do everything, but the coffee maker. I know, I did something right. But, it's that, what was I talking about? Oh my God, I'm ADD.
Long road.
It's a long road. Exactly. You have to have, there's something I've realized that each time you go into making that movie, you'll realize which relationships work for you and which ones don't. And it's okay if you realize that there's a relationship that doesn't work. It's okay. Not everyone's on the same page. So you want to find the relationships that do work for you, like you get each other. You've got that flow. You're moving in the same direction because that will help you grow as well. It's not, like I said, it's like getting other people's input. I love getting other people's input. Tell me where it sucks so I know how to make it better. That's always my perspective. Tell me what needs to be fixed because I'm sure I missed something. There's that sense of humility of, I'm not perfect, help me make this great. And that's a great learning process for you as a filmmaker as well because you're seeing things that you don't see, and it's a great learning process to kind of go through that. So that's kind of like the little thing that I have about the collaboration part with, kind of know where you're at in the relationship scheme of things and the politics behind it, being open to other people's opinions, but also maintaining your vision. It's another thing when someone tries to completely hash your story into bits and go, I want to do this. It's just like, whoa, wait a second. So, that's my 2 cents on it.
No, I think that's fantastic, Jessie. I think also piggybacking again off of what you said, the idea of not just collaborating and having your authentic voice, but also, as I said, be prepared, do your research because your voice may be so unique that unfortunately it's not going to necessarily resonate with everybody. I have, found several, videos on YouTube that I find hysterically funny, and I will sit there till I'm literally ready to pee my pants, and everybody around me, it's like you could hear a pin drop. Right. I actually found this on the opening night of HollyShorts. If you were there, there was a wonderful, wonderful short that was directed by Chadwick Boseman called Heaven, and Chadwick Boseman actually played in 40, Jackie Robinson in 42, and I absolutely loved this short, and I was talking to all these people about it, and they just didn't feel the same way about it because it didn't resonate with them. That wasn't their voice. So it's definitely something when you come up with this idea or wherever you are in the process is always to do sort of that mental check of what will I consider success? What will resonate with my brand and with other people? So if you want to do a short that resonates with you because it's about parenting, know that this probably isn't going to go over well with the tweens. And so, tailor everything to sort of that end goal of what will be success for you. Is it, you know, 1 million hits on YouTube, or is it maybe 100,000 hits in a certain country because you know those people have the same kind of voice as you? I think it's fantastic what you said about, you know, making sure that it's funny. If it's funny, it makes people laugh. And, you know, if it's a drama, it should make people cry. And take all these sort of tools that we're dropping into your toolbox and using that to, again, just express your voice. It doesn't matter if you're a man or woman. It's universal storytelling.
So the thing about that film is, one, this is a filmmaker who has made features, and in the past year, well, really 6 months, has made 2 shorts as well. So one, the question is, well, once you cross over and you've made your first feature, you know, do I need to go back and make short form anymore? And I think in these 2 cases, the answer was it made sense for her to do that. The clients were very, very generous. The first client, Prada, for a film called The Door, basically said, just have them wear the clothes. You come up with the story, right? So it's not like you need to hold up the bag or it needs to say Mew Mew or anything like that. So very generous. And once again, this Fashion Fair is a cosmetic line focusing on women of color, and very, very old historic line, trying to find a fresher, younger voice. And they came to Ava to create something beautiful. And Ava loves a love story. She's like you. She loves a love story. I'm like, can we just have aliens come down the sky? No, that's not working. She was like, maybe on the next project. But, you know, so she loves a love story. And her feature films, I Will Follow and Middle of Nowhere, are dramas that deal with issues of love, but I would say that they're shot in a darker way. And this is an example of her doing a love story in a much lighter way. So she's still using her personal voice, but there's definitely a shift. There's a directorial shift. And I think that's, you know, what you were talking about earlier of staying true to your voice, as we've all been saying. You know, there's a way to do that and still show range. And I think this gave her the opportunity to show, you know, kind of like, you know, her past films. Well, why is the woman always got to be sad? Why is it got to be, you know, middle of nowhere sad? I Will Follow sad. That's some of the things that we were hearing, which we don't listen to too much. But, I mean, I think this showed that she can do a happy love story as well. So that's why I showed this.
When I say that you want to be true to your brand and thinking about what your brand is as well, I think it's very helpful to talk to somebody who's great at marketing to help you define what that brand is, because it doesn't have to be that this is a woman brand, this is a woman that likes romantic comedies. It can stand for quality, or for, say, a touch or a flair in a particular way of doing things, or shooting with a particular type of camera, or shooting, you know, HD versus SD, or it can be a number of different things. And it's just how you choose, working with in collaboration with, you know, great people to express, you know, what's inside of you.
And one of the things that you'll notice about this film is it's cheaper because it's MOS, right? That cuts out...
Music rights.
That's right, the music rights, yeah. But that cuts out half of the technical scramble in production. It makes you clarify your story. There are a lot of long... if you look at The Door, you'll see that it's not lingering on the faces as much, because it isn't about... They're selling makeup. You know, but what that film also did was use music in a way. If you go back and watch it again online, how the music transitions, and she has a team of female music supervisors and composers that find stuff for her, that create stuff for her. And sometimes music rights for music, like what you probably heard here, aren't going to be as much as if it's somebody that's on the charts. But that's something for you to consider when you're doing your films. You can make a film that is featuring a style, a sensation, an idea, an essence, a concept, without the burden of lines that actors will say, you know what, it just doesn't feel right for me to say it this way. And the truth is, it doesn't feel right for us to say it this way. But that doesn't mean that on the day you're going to find a better solution. So maybe experimenting with giving the story a chance to breathe without dialogue, but using music is another way, is worth your experimenting on. And I'm always taken by how Ava uses music so evocatively in her films, and it's easy to forget about that when we get so married to the page. And that, look at The Door. You can find it again online, and you'll see just another way that she's done that as well.
I would just like to give the credit to our wonderful music supervisor, Morgan Rhodes, who is actually a DJ on KPFK. She has her very, very early morning show. I've never heard it because I'm never up that early. I go to bed early, and I like to wake up later. But yeah, it's like 4 a.m. I mean, it's like 4 a.m., you know? So, but Morgan Rhodes, who is a music supervisor on Middle of Nowhere as well, and The Door and Say Yes.
But that's an idea. Cultivate somebody who you know who always has a great playlist.
Right. And I will say these shorts, it wasn't a mistake, the MOS. I mean, it was written like that. I mean, sometimes happy mistakes happen where I've been there before in film school where your audio's not quite right. You shouldn't have hired that guy. And you have to figure out a creative way to work around it. Maybe those lines aren't so important or whatever, but you can convey a lot without dialogue, so it works out.
There's another thing also. I mean, this is my first time ever seeing this, and it's gorgeous. It is gorgeous. Let her know it's gorgeous. And but I think one of the things that I like harping back about again is it knows what it wants to be. Like, I sense within the first few seconds, okay, this is going to be something romantic. It's going to be something sexy. That music just sets that tone, and you're there for the ride. And then she starts walking around, and you're like, oh, there's going to be a surprise somewhere. And so when they make that kiss, I mean, like, when I said if it's going to be that romantic thing, make it really romantic, and she just, like, she just drives that nut home. And you're just there, and you're like, oh, my God. It's just...
It's like they're kings and queens coming.
Exactly. I mean, it's so romantic. And that's the same feel that I constantly say that if it's going to be romantic, make it romantic. I was swooning like behind this poster. It was so beautiful, and it was sexy. It was sexy without being trashy in any way. It was just beautiful. Everyone was happy. It was gorgeous. It was gorgeous.
I don't even know how to pose the question around this, but as I was hearing you talk about having your own voice. One of the things that I find that I run into, like, my agent is a dude and younger than I am. And, like, he, of course, because he's an agent and a gatekeeper to the industry, he wants me to create movies that are like other successful movies. And I have a tendency to write women in their 50s and 60s as strong central leads of my movies. And then I have a tendency to write gay men. And neither of those things are huge blockbuster things that you see in movies, but I do believe there's a huge audience for them, because every so often a film will break through. And I think you're also seeing, like, with The Heat and Bridesmaids, and there's a whole new, even though it's still really, really hard to get a script read with, like, it's a broad comedy and it's all women, but it's changing because there's a couple of examples of, I think, maybe even a desperate audience of, like, oh, thank God, like, there's not a lot of dick jokes in this one. I mean, that's just my personal. But so I'm just like, I think one thing that I'm starting to sort of stumble on is that, well, I can stay true to my voice, but I have to work extra hard because my scripts have to be so true to genre. Like, I have to rely on my genre. If it's a comedy with these characters, then I have to make sure it's the funniest comedy. Well, I mean, I make those horrible, like, not horrible, but dramedies, you know what I mean? They're a little harder because they're emotional and they say something, but they make you laugh all the way through. But I have to make them funnier because it has to be the best script anybody's ever read for them to get past the idea that somebody won't watch it because it's about a gay man or it's about, So I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts about, like, breaking through the gatekeepers and what people think is true about what people want to watch. I personally think it's false, but that might just be a stupid business perspective on my part. So I'm curious about that.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned, of course, that your agent's a dude, but we actually have a couple of women on the board of Women in Film who are agents who are women, and that's how we have to affect the change in the industry, because, of course, he's speaking from his authentic voice. It's not a movie that he wants to see. And of course, as a gatekeeper, he's going to keep the gate closed because that's not the content that he wants to consume. So again, you'll have to measure your definition of success by doing the research and seeing, okay, if your audience is the gay men, where are they consuming their content? And I would argue right now that it's not feature films. I would argue that it's on television. I mean, Modern Family is huge. And I just attended a Television Academy event where the whole Modern Family cast was there, and I was actually shocked. I didn't know that Eric Stone Street wasn't gay. It was fantastic.
And a huge football fan.
And a huge football fan. But, I think that, that's where the change is happening, because it's content that everybody's getting access to, and it's actually helping create the audience, because not everybody has the money to go see a feature film nowadays, or the patience to sit for 3 hours. So, the short form content, I would argue that, starting that sort of brand online, you can be very successful online, and, creating it with branded content. I'm sure there are brands out there, because we know that those people that you like to write about, they have money and they buy stuff. So I think that's a perfect way to get your voice to the audience that it resonates with. So, for example, something like this, I'm sorry, I forgot the name of the show. Say Yes is a perfect way of translating what's true to your heart into the brands that are out there that service those industries, the Pradas,
Yeah, and just practical things. Get a different agent. One who, and as he's probably good for somebody else, but not for what you want to do. Consider TV Land, because that's an intersection of the market that you just described. And Sean Hayes and Todd Milliner's company that do Hot in Cleveland. And they're developing content. They also do, what's that fantasy show on Grimm's Fairy Tales? I mean, they have a huge range. They're doing that game show with Jane Lynch, and something about Sean Hayes Saves the World. So they have a huge range of platform, but that's their audience right there. And TV Land is a good place to consider pitching.
And I will say two things. One, in Ava's film, Middle of Nowhere, it's a drama, but there are a couple moments in there where I'm just like laughter city, because and she's always like, why are you laughing? It's not supposed to be funny. But because it relates to me. It's something that I could hear someone in my family saying, and I just find it hysterical. So, I feel like, you don't have to necessarily pound so hard, because I feel like those moments will shine through. If they're funny and they're relatable, they're going to be funny. And also, we just distributed our 6th film called Big Words, which is about a hip-hop group that was basically a hip-hop group from the 90s that we flash forward to 2008, and they're all not hip-hop artists anymore. You have the DJ who just can't let go. He's still trying to cut in his basement. You have the main rapper who is a tech person now, and totally, he just rhymes to himself. And then you have a member who's basically out of the closet now. He had misogynistic lyrics at that time, but now he's openly gay. And I think that the film worked because it's about a lot of different things in the context of the film. So even if your characters are gay or they're older, I feel like there's still probably moments that make them universal, and you just have to, work with those and find someone that's going to support that vision of your filmmaking, because there's definitely moments where there's no reason why, we should look at a film and say, that has a gay guy in it. I'm probably not so interested, without even having any more information, about the film or the work or the project. So yeah.
There's one that your situation reminds me of a friend of mine who also started as one of my interns at our company, and he was a screenwriter. He loved writing, and he had a crummy manager at the time. He had just won something at UCLA. Talented kid. And I wanted to option one of his scripts because I read it and I'm like, this kid's got talent. Like, this kid was like really, really good. So that was a fiasco. What ended up happening was his script ended up winning like the Sloan Foundation Award and got some crazy grant. got into Tribeca Film Lab. Now, the reason why I'm telling you this is because his manager wanted him to write some, like, you know, historical, blah, 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 sci-fi, whatever, all great and good. He wasn't 100% for it, but he knew that that was his job. He needed to keep his manager happy. But what he also did was he kept writing. He had a bunch of other scripts, and he went out there and found other producers for his other scripts. So as he was, you know, winning other stuff with, like, other material that he had put out there, once he won the Sloan Foundation Award, he dropped his manager, went out looking for a real, like, representation. His other scripts were, like, gaining traction, and he's now at CAA. And his stuff is getting looked at by studios. The moral of the story is, you know what your strength is as a writer, and you know what you can improve, and you know what your genre is, and you know what you really like. Now, yeah, you've got this manager you have to deal with. Deal what you need to deal with. But your talent will shine where it needs to shine. And finding the right people, like these, you know, they're giving you, like, try this, try this, try this. In the meantime, don't wait for your manager. Go out there and find the people who will let your talent shine. But at the meantime, you gotta do what you gotta do, right? So do what you gotta do, but don't let the stuff that really makes your talent come out get forgotten underneath the stuff that you have to deal with. So it is double duty, but I wanted to share that story because I was so inspired by what happened to him, because he never gave up. And I don't want you to give up.
Okay, my brother is also an emerging actor, and so we have this conversation all the time. He's like you. He just wants to act. He just wants to be in somebody's project, and if nobody's putting him in a project, he's going to get together with his friends, and they're going to do some things, you know what I mean? So what do they do with that project afterwards? And I would say it's really dependent on you. Is your goal immediate, or is it a long-term thing? Is it something that you feel like would be the most impactful on internet? Like if you put it up on YouTube, is it that type of film that is going to, you know, get a lot of hits right away and then maybe, you know, create a platform for yourself? Or is it something that is better suited for sort of like the slow burn of the film festival? You know, you do a little HollyShorts, you do a little, you know, film festival over there, you know, you keep it going for a year or two on the film festival circuit and tour with it, because that's where you're going to make contacts if people like it. So I mean, you would, you know, it'd be advisable for you to be present if at all possible. So I think it's really up to you. But basically, that's your package. If you're in it and you wrote it, then that's your package. That's what you have to market yourself and your abilities with. So, and I don't know, maybe Sharon, you as an actor producer, yeah.
Edit it down to, you know, a minute and a half of what you think is the best stuff. Make sure you have that piece so that can be the way you audition for other projects. That film may not move you forward just because the film itself is particularly special. But if you now have yourself on film in a way that you think really represents the best of what you can do right now, gather that little jewel and set it in a beautiful piece that you wear right here and you can have at the touch of your fingers to send to somebody. Don't think that that's the limitation of what you are as an actress. You're young, you're going to keep changing. So that will be, it will capture you for a moment in time. And don't ever forget that no matter whether that film takes off on its own and has a life beyond this calling card that it is for you now, you will always have learned so much from having made this film, that I say the next thing you can do is don't spend too much time worrying about beyond editing this down, what you can do with it, but what are you going to do next?
And if you're still in the process of developing your idea and, you know, it's not quite there yet, I like a lab, you know, a talent lab, you know, and there are tons around. I actually was part of Film Independence Project Evolve a couple of years ago, which has writers, directors, producers, cinematographers, editors, and then, you know, the extra people like me who want to be on the business side of things all coming together to work on shorts. So that's a good kind of foundation if you're not quite sure what you're doing yet. You know, don't be, you know, afraid to take a step back and just have sort of an experiment with your talent.
So it's definitely it's a copyright issue. So, you know, for studios, when I've been in-house, we always have submission agreements because, again, they get thousands of scripts, and it's very likely that what you're submitting might have elements that are similar. So it's part of the reason to go through trusted sources is credibility, but also because from a legal standpoint, we know that their credibility is based on the fact that they've done all the right filings. So first and foremost, while filing with the WGA is great, file for copyright with the Copyright Office. It's a little more expensive, but you cannot sue for story theft that somebody stole your copyright unless it's a registered copyright with the Copyright Office. WGA registration is not copyright registration. So it's $35. It's on copyright.gov. You can upload your script. It's done. It takes like 4 minutes. And that way, it's another way of showing and getting credibility when you're trying to submit these things is to have a copyright registration number on it so that people know, hey, this is a person who either has legal advice or is smart enough to know that they've gone through all the protections necessary to submit it. So, you know, they can look at the copyright registration and say, hey, we can't rip this off. Sure. Mm-hmm. Basically, copyright happens, there's sort of two forms of copyright. Copyright happens the minute it's your idea, your expression that's fixed in a tangible way. So when it's actually typed words on paper. I could create copyright right now by reciting a poem and writing it on a napkin. If I want to copy it, write it in that form, it's protected. And as are all derivatives based on that original piece. You know, it can get down to minutia when it comes to the actual lawsuit, whether or not somebody, infringed on your copyright because it was such a general thing. Like if you wrote a script about Cinderella, right, in the public domain, and a studio comes out with Cinderella, it'd be hard to prove that they ripped off your story unless, certain lines of dialogue that were in whatever form that you had written down and had filed for copyright were actually in that final version that they came out with in the studio. So we advise our clients generally that once the script is final, because we're going to be shopping it, that they file for copyright in that script. And then once it gets distributed, usually the studio will go and register for copyright in the finished film.